Welcome to this deep dive. We're diving into Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, yeah, classic.
Yeah, so we're going to explore the full text of the story. And I think you'll find there's much more to discover than just a spooky, scary story.
Absolutely. I think what's so fascinating about this story is how Irving takes this chilling ghost story and he masterfully intertwines it with this really captivating depiction of life in early America.
Yeah.
And specifically within a Dutch community.
Yeah.
And it's a story that's just layered with humor, social commentary, and even a touch of romance.
Yes, and one of the first things that struck me when I was rereading this story was Irving's description of Sleepy Hollow itself.
Oh, yeah.
He portrays it as this secluded, almost enchanted valley, drowsy, dreamy, and he emphasizes how this atmosphere affects everyone.
Right.
It makes you wonder, if the setting itself plays a role in shaping the events that unfold.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. In the early 1800s, the Hudson Valley was still considered a relatively new frontier,
right?
A place just ripe with all these stories about the supernatural.
Yeah.
And so Irving really taps into this sense of mystery and folklore and creates a setting that feels both very real and incredibly otherworldly.
And then we're introduced to the unforgettable Ichabod Crane.
Oh, yes.
The lanky, somewhat awkward schoolmaster with a penchant for ghost stories. Mm-hmm. Irving's description of him is so incredibly vivid.
Yes.
And quite humorous.
I was going to say he's hilarious.
Wouldn't you say?
Ichabod is a brilliant example of Irving's satirical wit.
Yeah.
He's this caricature of the overly ambitious, somewhat naive intellectual who just believes every single tall tale he hears.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like Irving is gently poking fun at both Ichabod and the superstitious nature of the community itself.
Yes, and here's where things take a really interesting turn. Ichabod sets his sights on Katrina Van Tassel.
Ah, yes.
The beautiful and wealthy daughter of a prominent farmer.
Of course.
She's described as a bit of a coquette, which essentially means she enjoys the attention of men and kind of skillfully flirts with them.
Yeah, she knows how to play the game a little bit.
Yeah, and of course, Ichabod isn't the only one vying for her affection.
Oh, of course not. This is where Irving really delves into the social dynamics of Sleepy Hollow.
Yes.
Katrina, as the heiress to this prosperous farm, represents a significant prize for any ambitious young man in the community. Right. She's surrounded by suitors.
Yeah.
But the most notable, of course, is Abraham Brombones Van Brun.
Yes.
Who is Ichabod's complete opposite in almost every way.
Yes. Brombones, the local strongman, the prankster.
Yes.
Irving describes him as having a rough chivalry about him, meaning that while he's strong and boisterous, he also has this code of honor and a certain charm.
Right. He's the classic folk hero.
Yeah, he's confident, he's well-respected within the community,
yeah,
and clearly a formidable rival for the timid Ichabod.
Absolutely. And their rivalry really cleverly contrasts different types of masculinity and social standing.
Right.
So you have Ichabod with all of his book learning and his kind of refined manners. He's at a disadvantage in this very rural setting where physical strength and local reputation hold much more sway.
Yeah.
Brom, on the other hand, embodies the values and the strengths that are really admired in that environment.
And you see this tension come to a head at the quilting frolic at the Van Tassel farm.
Oh, yeah. The quilting frolic.
It's not just a party. It's like a microcosm of Sleepy Hollow society. You've got music, dancing, delicious food.
Right.
But also these spooky stories that are being shared,
yeah,
which really get under Ichabod's skin.
This is a crucial turning point in the story.
Oh, for sure.
It's where Irving subtly sets the stage for Ichabod's downfall.
Yes.
As the guests are sharing all these local ghost stories,
right,
particularly the one about the Headless Horseman,
yeah,
you can almost see Ichabod's imagination running wild.
Oh, absolutely. And he's clearly out of his element.
Right.
Awkwardly trying to dance.
Right.
Failing miserably at impressing Katrina, while Brom is effortlessly charming everyone. It's almost as if Irving is setting him up for a fall, both literally and figuratively.
Precisely. This scene really highlights that social gulf between Ichabod and the world that he so desperately wants to enter.
Yeah.
He's a bookish outsider trying to fit into a community with its own traditions, its own set of values, and his efforts are, let's just say, less than successful.
Right.
It makes him vulnerable, an easy target for Brom's pranks and for the community's superstitions.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah. Speaking of vulnerability, that brings us to Ichabod's fateful ride home from the party.
Oh, yeah.
This is where Irving truly ramps up the suspense.
Right.
He takes us on this journey through the dark and eerie landscape of Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
And you can practically feel the tension building with every sentence.
You're right. This is the part that really stuck with me when I was rereading it.
Yeah.
Irving does an amazing job of describing those sights and sounds that just heighten Ichabod's fear.
Uh-huh.
The rustling leaves the lonely road, the ominous shadows. And remember, his head is already filled with those spooky ghost stories.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the one about the Headless Horseman.
Right. It's as though Irving uses Ichabod's heightened state of mind to, like, blur the lines between reality and imagination.
Right.
You start to wonder, is Ichabod truly seeing a ghost, or is this just his fear taking over?
Exactly.
And Irving very cleverly leaves it open to interpretation.
Yeah, every sound, every shadow becomes a potential monster in his mind.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, he encounters the Headless Horseman.
Right.
Irving's description of this shadowy figure on horseback carrying its head on the saddle.
Yeah.
It's absolutely chilling.
It's such a powerful symbol of fear and the unknown.
Yeah.
This figure embodies all of the anxieties and superstitions that Ichabod has absorbed during his time in Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
And that missing head, that incompleteness, just adds another layer of terror.
It's like something out of a nightmare.
Totally.
And Ichabod's reaction? Pure panic.
Oh, yeah.
He tries to outrun the horseman.
Right.
But it's his futile attempt.
Of course.
The horseman seems to be like toying with him.
Yes.
Matching his every move.
This chase scene is a masterpiece of suspense building.
Yeah.
I mean, you can feel Ichabod's terror just mounting as he realizes he can't escape.
Yeah.
And Irving's use of the landscape, the shadowy woods, the infamous church bridge,
Yeah.
it all perfectly mirrors Ichabod's growing desperation.
Right. And then comes that heart-stopping moment when the horseman rises in his stirrups and hurls his head at Ichabod. It's so sudden, so unexpected.
And then silence.
Yeah. Just like that, Ichabod vanishes,
Gone.
leaving behind only his hat and, curiously, a shattered pumpkin.
This ending is one of the most debated aspects of the story.
Oh, for sure.
Did the horseman actually take Ichabod? Was it all an elaborate prank orchestrated by Brom Bones?
Yeah.
Or did Ichabod simply flee in terror and reinvent himself somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
Irving never gives us a definitive answer.
Right.
Which, of course, just adds to the mystery and the enduring appeal of the story.
It's like Irving is inviting us, the readers, to become detectives.
I love that.
We're left to examine the clues
Yes.
and decide for ourselves what truly happened to Ichabod Crane.
Right. And it encourages us to think critically,
Yeah.
question what we believe, and explore all the different possibilities.
Right.
You know, the story isn't just about passive reading. It's about active engagement and interpretation.
Now let's talk about that shattered pumpkin for a second.
Okay.
Found near Ichabod's hat.
Yeah.
It's a peculiar detail, isn't it?
Very much so.
Is it just a random element?
Right.
Or is Irving hinting at something more?
Well, the shattered pumpkin has always intrigued me.
Yeah.
Some scholars believe that it symbolizes Ichabod's shattered dreams and aspirations,
Okay.
while others see it as a clue pointing to Brom's involvement in the disappearance.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Well,
What do you think it symbolizes?
I'm leaning toward the interpretation of shattered dreams.
Okay.
You know, here's this outsider Ichabod who longs to be accepted in this community, to win the heart of Katrina, to essentially become someone he's not.
Right.
And that pumpkin smashed to pieces
Yeah.
seems to represent the crushing of those hopes.
That's a very compelling interpretation.
Yeah.
And it aligns with the story's themes of social climbing ambition and the clash between individual desires and societal expectations.
Right.
Ichabod, in many ways, represents the perils of trying to force yourself into a mold that doesn't quite fit.
But what if we look at it from a different angle?
Okay.
What if the shattered pumpkin isn't just about Ichabod's dreams, but also about the illusory nature of Sleepy Hollow itself? This place is steeped in folklore, superstition, and tall tales.
Right.
And the pumpkin, like, those stories could represent something that appears solid,
Yeah.
but ultimately crumbles under scrutiny.
That's a brilliant insight.
Yeah.
It adds another layer of meaning to the story, reminding us that appearances can be deceiving.
Right.
Perhaps Sleepy Hollow isn't the idyllic, sleepy little town it seems to be, but rather a place where fear and manipulation thrive beneath the surface.
And that brings us back to the question of who or what is truly responsible for Ichabod's disappearance.
Right.
Is it the supernatural, as many in Sleepy Hollow believe, or could it be something more earthly, more human,
Yeah.
and perhaps even more sinister?
Yeah.
It feels like we're dealing with like layers of deception here.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just in the story itself, but in the way that Irving presents it.
Exactly. And that multi-layered deception is a key part of Irving's social commentary.
Yeah.
Remember, he's writing this in the early 1800s,
Right.
a time of significant change and upheaval in America. You know, the young nation is trying to forge its own identity.
Right.
And there's this tension between the old ways represented by Sleepy Hollow
Right.
and the encroaching forces of modernity
Yes.
embodied by someone like Ichabod Crane.
So Ichabod, with his love for books and his somewhat formal manners,
Yeah.
represents this clash between the educated outsider
Right.
and the ingrained beliefs of a rural community.
Exactly.
He's ridiculed for his fear of the supernatural. But isn't everyone in Sleepy Hollow just a little bit superstitious?
That's a great point. Irving subtly suggests that superstition isn't just limited to isolated communities like Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
It's a human tendency, something that can affect anyone, regardless of their education or social standing.
Right.
Even in a society that prides itself on reason and progress, there's always that underlying fear of the unknown that pull towards the mystical and the unexplained.
And it's interesting how Irving uses humor to expose these societal anxieties.
Yeah.
He doesn't shy away from poking fun at the characters and their beliefs,
Right.
even while acknowledging the enduring power of folklore and tradition.
His humor adds a layer of complexity to the social commentary.
Right.
He's not just criticizing superstition,
Right.
he's also exploring the ways in which it shapes communities, relationships, and even individual identities.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It makes you wonder about that rumor that Ichabod wasn't actually spirited away,
Oh, yeah.
but instead moved on, became a lawyer,
Right.
maybe even entered politics. Is Irving hinting at a more mundane explanation for his disappearance?
That's one of the most intriguing aspects of the story.
Yeah.
By introducing this rumor,
Yeah.
Irving throws another wrench into the works,
Right.
challenging us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about Ichabod and his fate.
Yeah, imagine if the story ended with Ichabod just packing his bags and leaving Sleepy Hollow
Yep.
disillusioned but determined to create a new life for himself.
Totally.
It would be a completely different kind of ending.
It would.
But in some ways, it might be even more unsettling.
It would certainly add a layer of psychological realism to the story.
Yeah.
It would suggest that sometimes the most terrifying monsters we face aren't supernatural beings,
Right.
but rather our own fears and insecurities and the limitations we place upon ourselves.
So the shattered pumpkin could represent more than just Ichabod's broken dreams.
Yeah.
It could also symbolize his shattered illusions about Sleepy Hollow
Right.
and his own place within that community.
And perhaps that's the most enduring lesson of the legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
That the line between reality and fantasy, between truth and deception,
Yeah.
it's often blurred.
Right.
And it's up to us to discern what's real and what's merely a product of our own imaginations or the manipulations of others.
What an incredible journey this has been.
I know.
We started with a seemingly straightforward ghost story.
Right.
And we ended up exploring themes of superstition, social ambition, the clash between tradition and modernity,
Yeah.
and the power of storytelling itself.
It's a testament to Irving's genius that the legend of Sleepy Hollow continues to resonate with readers centuries after it was written.
Yes.
It's a story that invites multiple interpretations and sparks endless discussions.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one last thought.
Okay.
What if Ichabod didn't encounter a ghost at all, but rather a cleverly disguised Brom Bones using local legends and his knowledge of the area to scare off his rival?
That's a classic theory,
Yeah.
and it perfectly captures that ambiguity and mystery at the heart of the story.
Right.
Irving never confirms or denies the existence of the Headless Horseman,
Right.
leaving it up to us to decide whether we believe in the supernatural or the cunning of a love-struck rival.
So we encourage you to reread the story, consider the evidence, and come to your own conclusions.
Yes.
Was Ichabod truly a victim of the supernatural?
Right.
Or was he simply outwitted by a master manipulator who knew how to exploit local fears and legends to his advantage? The answer, like so much in this captivating tale, is shrouded in shadows and open to interpretation.
Well said. I think that's a great place to leave it.
Yeah, this was fun.
As always,
Until next time.
happy reading and perhaps a little happy Halloween.